Zando Penguin Audio presents Teo's Durumi by Elaine U. Narrated by Judy Alice Lee.
Dedication. For Sam. Thanks for changing my life for the best by saying hello. Record of Von Kent, xenobotanist. 38.04.16. We're approaching Artemis base on the moon, and as it seems our strange time on the Pangaea is coming to a close, I figured I'd jot down some thoughts. Not for posterity. Phoenix has made it clear that once we leave his ship, we can never speak of his crew or our time together. This is, understandably, to protect his team, which is currently wanted by the Alliance. For so-called raiders, though they've been particularly hospitable to us. I'm handwriting the note rather than logging a voice memo or leaving a digital print, so it will be easier to destroy it. Also, I did want to organize my thoughts to better remember them, and isn't handwriting a pleasant, a severely underrated pastime? I used to scribble in diaries when I was younger and start off my voice memos with the gruff captain's log. But it's a bit embarrassing to look back. It's much easier to believe I'm writing a letter to a dear friend, even if that dear friend is a figurative future self. So, hello, dear friend and reader. To begin, I'd like to introduce the Alliance crew that I am a part of, the Honor crew, although we can be only loosely called that now, as the physical ownership no longer exists. This is particularly distressing to its captain, Teo. The Honor, well, to say it kindly, had seen some better days, and Te, well, I've always been told that if you cannot find anything kind to say, it's best not to continue. But she did love her ship very much, and in some ways, I think she has tried to do right by its crew. She served for a time on a ship with Ocean's older brother, earlier on in their Alliance careers, before he passed away. I think this is what influenced her to take on Ocean some years back, when the Alliance ships that would welcome her were few, or otherwise non-existent. Ocean Yoon is our XO and pilot, and she's happiest when she's behind the wheel. What can I tell you about Ocean? She was born on an island off Jeju, and her mother is a Haenyeo leader, but Ocean probably wouldn't want you to know that. She was sent to savoir-faire when she was young to become a diplomat, but dropped out. But she probably wouldn't want you to know that either. I believe she joined the Alliance after her brother died, and again, I find I'm being indiscreet. There's actually very little Ocean would want anyone to know about her, least of all that although she seems quite cold, I found that to be merely exterior. Next, Margaret Thierry, also known as Maggie, who can be described by her variety of interests and talents. She's an engineer and cook, and would love to tell you the difference between Schubert and Schumann. Her exuberance has buoyed us through many a crisis, and currently, she's putting together snacks for our regular movie night with the combined Honor and Pangaea crews. Neither of us are Alliance members, we're both contract workers, but Maggie signed on to take in some of the solar for experience. She wants to open a restaurant back on Venus with her spouses after this. Or a garage? Maybe a combination garage/eatery? I'm not certain Maggie's decided. Haven Sasani, who prefers to go by his last name, is the newest member of the Honor, and is quite conscientious with his reserved demeanor. I imagine this suits him in his role as a Mortemian, those who practice funeral rites and are well-versed in death culture across the solar. It seems Sasani's close to his father, and he plans to return to Prometheus to take up his Mortemian duties after a stint with the Alliance. Currently, he's our highly skilled medic, and although he may come off as rebuffing your attempts at conversation, I personally think he's shy. I get the feeling, too, that he may not have always been treated kindly due to his Mortemian role. Theophilus Anand is perhaps the newest de facto member, though. You might recognize the Anand name from the tech conglomerate that dominates the solar and has a partnership with the Alliance. Teo, he feels Theophilus is rather stuffy and imposes a distance, is the second son of that, well, speaking of lofty words, I suppose some would call it an empire. Maybe we should say he was the second son, as recently, his parents and his older brother Declan were tragically murdered. The situation has sobered Teo, but I wouldn't have you believe that the headlines that labeled him as frivolous or philanderous or any such nonsense were ever true. He may not show many people, but he's one of the most thoughtful folks I know. Oh, I suppose I should talk a little bit about myself. Von Kent, xenobotanist. To be frank, I followed Ocean onto the Owner. We had served on the Hadoken together before. In any case, Ocean and I go back a ways. I'm afraid I don't have very many interesting qualities. I'm engaged to a wonderful woman, Sumi, who serves on another Alliance ship. And I suppose I could talk to you about my algae? They're really fascinating specimens. Did you know that algae, unlike most plants, actually thrive from being placed under external stress like microgravity and create antioxidants and... Scratch that last note. Well, I just caught Maggie reading over my shoulder, and she said that no one cares as much as I do about algae. But I take heart in knowing that I have files upon files written on the subject if Maggie turns out to be wrong. I guess that brings us to the ship we're currently on, the Pandia, which is led by the intrepid Phoenix. The Phoenix, you might ask? Yes, the very same raider who's infamous across the solar and on all those wanted posters. I must say, though, I've seen some of those videos captured of him, and I used to think he gave off this air of a cartoon villain. In person, he's calmer, congenial, and caring of his crew. Not to say he doesn't thrive off attention. He came in the other day to read poetry to my plants, and whether that's because he agrees with me that it helps them grow or because he likes performing, I dare not say. Gemini is Phoenix's right-hand man. Although I've heard him refer to himself as Phoenix's left hand, mano izquierda, at times. I confess he's an enigma to me. He met Phoenix in Guatemala, and they've been together since. He's the one who has put together the different iterations of the Pandia's crew over the years, and Phoenix trusts him enough to leave it completely to him. So perhaps he operates as both of Phoenix's hands sometimes? One might say he's responsible for the Pandia and Owner colliding, as he's been trying to recruit Ocean to their team. So if nothing else, he's a very good judge of character. He has a soft step, and I've been startled more than once by his silent appearance. Cassiopeia, or Cass for short, is another member of Phoenix's crew who gives off a gruff front. But I heard that she saves all her money from the Pandia's exploits and sends it home to her family on Mercury. 3 younger sisters and 1 younger brother. Anyway, she's the only one of Phoenix's crew who wasn't scouted and brought on board by Gemini. She had been following Phoenix for years. He hails from Mercury as well, and begged to join them. Ares is the older brother of the group. He doesn't talk very much, but it's best to pay attention when he does. He's like the reticent character in a serial who finally speaks in the last episode to dispel pearls of wisdom. He has the intimidating aura and mass of a bodybuilder, but he claims he just does accounting for the Pandia. I confess I've only caught glimpses of the Pandia's final member, Lupus, and usually against the glow of a monitor or 3. Gemini says Lupus is an NYC kid who got caught hacking into the library database. They're soft-spoken, and you might be surprised to hear that out of all the Owner crew members, they get along best with Maggie. I hope to get to know them better, though, and they're giving a little presentation to introduce tonight's film of choice. But before I close, I fear I must give some space to those responsible for bringing our crews together. I speak, unfortunately, of Corvus and his team members. Corvus has some connection to Phoenix from the past, but we know him primarily as the one behind the deaths of Teo's family. He has some other nefarious design that's unclear as of yet, but he has long since harbored resentment against the Anand family and Anand Tech for draining Mercury of its resources. It seems that he has come into money and resources of his own, allowing him to enact his plan, which includes Hadrian, who is currently impersonating Teo's older brother, Declan. He has some sort of suit that has allowed him to completely take on Declan's appearance. Even knowing the truth, I found it impossible to discern that he's an imposter. Hadrian as Declan is claiming not only to still be alive, but also that Teo is the one who killed their parents. I can't imagine what Teo must be going through. Amel, who sounds like a rather unpleasant character all around, and a fanatic follower of Corvus. He also used to work with Phoenix back before their ideologies and methods diverged. And Emery, a woman who operates a powerful augmented suit. Ocean, Phoenix, and Gemini had a run-in with her and Amel on Mercury and were severely outmatched. Also, whatever you might say about Corvus, he has very
Sample complete. Ready to continue?